I'm Tony Lockwood, founder of Thompson Wright Partners, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the latest episode of Inside Track, where I discuss business transformation journeys with leading figures in industry. Jane Logie joins me on the virtual sofa today. Jane has a great reputation for delivering change and transformation across many organisations. She has pulled together her skills and knowledge into a new book, which she talks about on the podcast, and it's surely one that you should try to get your hands on in due course. So, hi Jane, thanks for agreeing to join the podcast today. Great to have you on the show. Shall we start like we always do by you sharing a little bit about your background and how you got into change and transformation in the first place?
Hi, Tony. Thank you for inviting me along. Yes, we can. So I didn't really intend to get into change, but I think that's sort of fairly common when you sort of speak to people like me. You don't set out sort of thinking, my career is going to be spent in transformation, whatever that might mean. I started out in logistics. I worked for United Parcel Service when they first were expanding out of America. So when I joined them, they were wholly owned by their employees and massive in the USA, but they had little or no presence in Europe. And by the time I left, we were in, I think, 197 countries and territories. And I just happily joined them at that time where they were doing this massive expansion. And I got to do all sorts of things whilst I worked with them as they expanded into Europe and bought businesses, and then had to integrate those businesses, close parts of business, integrate things like their feeder networks, their hubs, their package distribution assets, if you like, across Europe. And it's just a great time. And I just found myself constantly exposed to, and then after a while, sort of leading change. And I eventually I went to work in Atlanta for a little while with UPS and helped to design what became their current generation of worldwide tracking, and package management systems. So I sort of started off in logistics, but ended up in change, but still very much focused in the logistics space. And then I met my husband at UPS, and that was an absolute no-no. You weren't allowed to fraternise with anyone. And it was the rule that the most senior person had to leave. So if you were going to do anything, the most senior, and at the time I was more senior to my husband, who was in industrial engineering. And I left and I joined Legal & General Assurance, who most of you will know. And one of the things that I really liked when I joined Legal & General was they said to me, they asked me, I went in to help them sort out their contact centre. They'd set up a contact centre and it wasn't performing very well at all. And I went in to help them try and sort it out because I'd done quite a lot of that with UPS. But one of the things that really attracted me to joining them was they promised me that I would never have to go abroad. And I was heartily sick of travelling because when I was with UPS, I spent half my life on a plane and half of my life out of the UK. And they promised me faithfully I wouldn't have to travel. And I kept that promise for a little while, apart from the 4 years they sent me to Egypt to set up a life insurance company. But with Legal & General, I ran big bits of their operation, but I also always was involved in change in one way or another. As I say, doing things as diverse as setting up a new life insurance company sponsored by the World Bank in Cairo, through to replatforming their businesses, reorganising and repositioning their shared service model, but always operational, but with change. And then after many very happy, very successful years at Legal & General, John Pollock, who was one of their group board directors, came up to retirement. And to be honest, I couldn't really see life at Legal & General without John. And there was an opportunity to take redundancy. And I just jumped at it. I thought, great, I've worked really hard all my life. I wanted to take a break. I wanted to write a book. I'd always fancied writing a book and I wanted to take a break. So I thought, this is it. I'll take redundancy and I'll have like a year off. And I took redundancy and I was working the week that I left, helping another consulting organisation to sort out a change in IT function that was a bit broken. And that's 6.5 or 7 years ago now. And it's fair to say I've had less holidays since I became an independent than I had when I worked for Legal and General. And I've spent all of that time doing two things. One, helping mend broken IT and change functions, or IT and change functions that don't get along and can't deliver, or need just streamlining and organising for the future, or fixing broken transformation programs. So a lot of time doing assessment, investigative work, trying to work out what's wrong, and then just getting sleeves rolled up and fixing it. So didn't plan to end up in change, but I've kind of been involved in change my entire life, and I don't think I'd be any good doing anything else. John Pollock, who I mentioned from Legal and General, he used to say to me, don't give Jane a job in BAU, she'll break whatever you give her, because there's no such thing as leaving anything alone. so that's how I got into change.
But it's fascinating though, isn't it? Your experience within UPS, being there as they went through that massive growth.
Yeah.
That's a great grounding in change, I find. I was fortunate to be involved in a couple of organisations as they went through significant growth, and it's almost that new frontiers, isn't it? Every other week or so, and it's, I wouldn't say necessarily making it up as you go, but a lot of it is people are doing things for the first time, and you've just got to find a way through, and you've got to take the people on that journey, etc., and you've got to bring teams together very, very quickly, and that's not too dissimilar, I don't think, when you step back in terms of how people run transformation. You've got to bring teams together, you've got to be quite agile and in the true sense of the word, and make sense of things as you go along, and when you hit a stumbling block, look for ways of overcoming it.
I don't know about you, but I do look back sometimes and I do think, my goodness, they let me do things that, if I were in their shoes, would I let somebody so green do it? But, at the end of the day, nobody died. Things got done. Organisations got, bought, merged and, whatever. But I think you're right. If you can join an organisation as they are going themselves through something so big, and you can get involved in it, get yourself into the forefront of what's going on. It's a fascinating sort of learning opportunity, isn't it, Tony?
Absolutely.
The other one, though, that was a massive learning opportunity for me was Cairo, because, as I say, I was out there to set up a life insurance company, and I ended up doing things that Legal and General would never have let me do. So I, looked after all the finance functions, fund management, pricing, investment policy. I literally got to do stuff that, I'd have had to be an actuary or an accountant in the UK and quite senior to make those types of decisions. So I think, again, startups are great places, aren't they, to learn lessons, about how to get stuff done and stuff done.
Yeah, it's interesting though. I think you have to be a particular type of person that thrives in a startup. You've got to be accepting of the fact that actually there are these big voids, and you've just got to step into it and work out what needs to happen as you go through. If you are very structured and want to do a lot of the analysis up front, but sometimes that just doesn't work. I was talking to someone the other day, and they were saying, they'd had a really, really successful career, quite senior in their sector, and the lady was saying, I'd really like to get involved in a startup, but when you started to go underneath why and what were they expecting, it was quite very quickly apparent that actually that she wouldn't have enjoyed it if she went into it, because of that uncertainty and that Yeah, that general uncertainty.
Yeah, I think there's uncertainty, and it's definitely not for the faint of heart, because I honestly did stuff every day that was new to me and that scared me a little bit, but you just had to get it done because, hey, at the end of the day, who else was going to do it? There's nobody going to magically arrive and make that decision for you. And yeah, definitely for people who, again, kind of thrive a little bit in the grey, operating where there isn't a rule book, which isn't for everyone, is it?
Not at all. So, given what you've done, and given, we'll come on to your book that you've written in a while, but it'd be good just to get your definition of transformation.
So the word transformation, right? So in my opinion, it just gets terribly misused. I see it all over the place in job ads, and then I read the ad and it's really not about transformation at all. I see it in people's titles. I talk to them and they're nothing to do with transformation even. So it means lots of different things to lots of people. And I think that's okay. I think that is okay. But to me, so I think transformation applies when you're trying to do something big. So you're looking at things like generating a big new value stream for your organization, or unlocking a whole new set of opportunities, maybe new markets, new customer segments that you've not operated in before, new industries, or you want to achieve something big around efficiency through the creation of like a big new business model. It's something that is almost driven in a way by all sorts of disruption around you in the market. So really big things happening that you see as either a massive threat or indeed a gigantic opportunity. And that turbulence, you're willing, and this is the thing for me, you're willing to put your organization that you have built through something that is going to be, it's going to be painful, no matter how we like to dress it up. We are all going to have to change in some way, and that is kind of mentally and emotionally difficult for organizations to do, because at the end of the day, they're all just people, aren't they? But at the end of the transformation, it should be, you should be in a position where you are able to now to create that new value, or you're in that new customer segment, or you've got those new and different products engineered and in the market selling well. What it isn't for me at all is, and I know people will argue with me, but it's not about small scale incremental improvement. It's that might get you over a long period of time to quite a different state if you consistently apply incremental improvement and change. It's not just about putting in some new technology. Often there is a technology component to it, as we all know, but it's not just about that. And it is by its very nature something that I personally believe is the domain of people with expertise, because unless you know what you're doing, you can really screw it up. And most big transformations are the subject matter and of board approvals, and often the city is looking in at what you're doing. Is your strategy going to give you a successful future? And the downside of getting it wrong is it's so big for the organization that I sometimes wonder why people wouldn't consider it the domain of expertise, an expert in it. You wouldn't decide to conduct your own open heart surgery, would you? But we decide to give it a go.
And I think I do believe that is changing. I think if you now look across the sort of FTSE, a lot of them now have got chief transformation officers or chief change officers sitting on the board. on the main board. So I think that's a good sign that they're actually on the same table. They're working with the peers across the different functions. But I absolutely agree with you. I think it's almost been. I hesitate to say this, but it's almost been chief exec saying, we're doing this. It's a big transformation to the city. Now, bugger off, because it's going to take us 3 years. And it's almost a way of getting that period of time so they can just do what they want to do.
Yeah.
And let's package it as a big transformation, when in reality, in some cases, they're anything but.
So, really encouraging. Sorry, Tony. I think it's really encouraging seeing, transformation at the top table. So my question to you is: so the chief transformation officers, are they practitioners? I come across quite a lot of them that I would say aren't. I think they're more strategists than transformation. I don't know. It's a question.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a whole range of people out there that you could looking at them through different lenses. You could say they're good, bad, or indifferent, depending upon the lens you look through. I think a lot of them have come from that strategy perspective, and I suppose that's not necessarily a bad place to come, because ultimately, going back to your definition, and I share it. It's about fundamentally moving an organisation from one state to a different state. So you need to have that absolute clarity about that vision and what the future looks like, and why you're moving there, and what's the strategic element of moving from A to B. So that's a good place to start. Whether or not a strategist has the necessary skills and experience to drive the change and take people on the journey, etc. I don't know. Some will and some won't.
Yeah. I just asked the question because it interests me. Carry on. Sorry.
No. I was just going to say. I was just coming back. I mentioned it earlier, and you were saying earlier that you were interested in writing a book, and I know you've just had one published. And I just find the title fascinating. Getting Transformation Right.
Yeah.
So I thought it was optimal time to bring that in now. So do you want to just provide the listeners with a quick synopsis of the approach that you cover within the book?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Tony. So I've wanted to write this book for a little while. And I finally got to the point where I'd got a break in the work I was doing, and I decided I was going to take a year out, and I was going to write, and I was going to do some thinking before I did some writing, because that's quite important. But the one thing that struck me, and I've spoken to so many other people, and they have had this experience also, is that particularly when you go into organisations to do assurance type activities, or to have a look at why a program is struggling and to think about how you can kind of fix it. It's really, really rare to find, sort of a new or novel problem. Wherever you go, it seems that it is the same sort of underlying, causes exist, whether that be, stuff like lack of strategy, lack of clear direction, not really knowing what it is the end result will look like, through to the structure of the teams, whether that's able to function or not, through to delivery mechanics, methods being used. It's always the same. Suppliers out of control. That's another one that you constantly come across. So same sorts of problems everywhere you go. And in talking to colleagues and listening to their stories as well, I thought, I'm going to write this down, because I think I always thought there's a book out there for senior managers, execs that are thinking about a transformation program, or might even have a transformation underway at the moment. And I thought, I can write down what are the things you should look out for, what should you watch out for, what could go wrong, and then armed with that insight as a senior executive or leader of change, you might then know some of the questions to ask your transformation team or your program team. And that's really at the heart of the book. So it's structured around 5 chapters. The first one is setting up for success. So it's all the things that you need to get in place to make any transformation program successful. So in there, it's things like, do you have your goals clearly set out? Have you got a common language agreed? So, when we say something, do we all mean the same thing when we say it? Who's accountable for what, processes, all that kind of good stuff. And then it moves into section 2, which is all about things like your business strategy and how this ties into the portfolio and sponsorship, business architecture and technical architecture, really important in the context of what we're talking about here. And then it moves into getting your program management practices in place, and then eventually your delivery mechanisms. So isn't it funny the amount of times you come across an organization and they're talking about the delivery methods before they've even defined what it is they're going to deliver? So then how are we going to package the work up? How are we going to structure it to best deliver? And then all of the change management, which obviously needs to run alongside every stage of the programme to make sure that things are packaged up in a way as well that makes sense to the people who are going to go through the change. And then at the end of each of those chapters in the book, there's a set of questions. And the idea behind these questions is that, again, if you're a busy executive and you want to know the sort of things that you should be asking your transformation team or your program team, heck, there's a list here that you can use that might give you some insight into that. And the book does give you a little bit by way of explaining what sort of answers you should expect to get. So I like to think of it as it's a book I wish many years ago that maybe somebody had given to me before I'd got involved in change and transformation. And it just might have opened my eyes up to, kind of the scale of what transformation was and the types of things I might come across and the sort of things that could go wrong, to be honest. That's the book.
Right.
It's
interesting. So a game changer term poacher. Isn't it? It's sort of like, these are all the things I used to get away with, but here's a checklist for him to go and check that your guys are not.
Yes. So that is the idea, really. So in a way, what I'd like to hope, I know this sounds awful because I'm in the consulting business, but if you read this, I'm hoping that people will have enough insight to not need someone to come and tell them what to look for. They will be able to have an idea. They'll probably need help to fix it. Let's not kid ourselves, because if you get in and you suddenly realise that your program's not structured effectively and, kind of your processes are broken, you're going to need a practitioner, someone who can come in and help you fix that, or your suppliers are out of control, or procurement's not behaving. You're probably going to need some help. But heck, you might at least know.
No, I agree. And I've personally done quite a lot of transformation program assurance type of activities, and it's I've got a process. I've got a series of questions. A series of things that you should be seeing, and I've shared those with clients before and left them with them and said, I'll do this first one, take your team through it, blah, blah, blah. Surprisingly enough, 3 to 6 months down the line, they're on the phone. Can you come in and do the follow-up? Because I think they like to understand the process that you're going through and the rationale for it, but actually having an independent person coming in is good at times for the sponsor or for the program director to have that independent view. It almost gives them that third insight, doesn't it?
I think as well. I mean, I don't know what your view is, but I think it also works well with the board, because they see somebody coming in that's got that independence, that's got that technical capability that perhaps is lacking in a way, and they can put together a very straightforward view of what it is that needs to get fixed in order for things to move ahead, because I find that often it's the board that struggle most with understanding the transformation program itself and where that program is in its journey. And I think it's hard to build confidence in the board so that they believe that that program is going to deliver, especially if it's one of those awful programs that's sort of going away into a dark hole for many months and then going to go ta-da at the end, 2 years later, which seriously I advise against these days anyway, because I don't think that works particularly well. But I think it works well, maintaining the board's confidence too. Things that I see most commonly are lack of real clear understanding of what the future is going to look like. So there might be a goal, there might be a set of goals, there might even be some documentation around something like a blueprint or a business model, but not that real understanding of what it is the organisation is going to look like when the transformation has finished, it's done what it needs to do. I think that's often lacking. And because that's lacking, then all the things beneath it which get you from A to B in themselves are then lacking. So I think that's one whole area. And then I think the other is there's an over focus on managing the mechanics of the program. So you've got lots of really senior executives in the detail of, kind of how things are being delivered. And I don't think that actually helps. I don't think that helps the program to move forward. I think, perhaps time better spent in that senior executive group is, consistently imagining the future and painting pictures of that future and making sure that everybody understands what that future picture looks like. And then having expertise in the program that can manage the mechanics of it, for you and give you the confidence you need.
Yeah, I was going to come back actually and you've just covered off what I was going to say. It is critical that you have a consistent understanding of that future vision, because I find that when that doesn't happen, or you believe it's there, but in reality it isn't. And it comes back to the point earlier, isn't it, about how do you define transformation? Everybody defines in different ways. So if you've got a vision that one person thinks it's X and another person thinks it's Y, immediately you're on a road to disaster, really. And spending time up front, making sure that everyone's on the same page is essential.
I think that's right, Tony. And I think the other thing that I try to work with boards to do is to make sure that everybody has some skin in the game and everybody's bought in, because whilst you've got a big transformation program underway, everything else has to be subservient, and personal agendas have to be put away. You need everybody around the top table kind of there in support of what the business is trying to do, because it's just too big and it's too big to fail and too important. And kind of the arguments that you get or the tensions you get, the natural tension that you get between certain departments, to some degree you need to put that to one side as well, and make sure that everybody's standing shoulder to shoulder. I worked with one organisation, and I remember saying to the CEO before I'd even started, I said, what does good look like for you? What's like 11 out of 10? And he said, well, obviously I need to get my transformation delivered. But he said, I'd like to do it with all of my top team standing shoulder to shoulder and agreeing for once that it's somewhere that, it's the direction we should go into. He said, because I completely believe that if they do, that bunch can achieve anything, but it's impossible to get them to agree. So when I work with organisations, one of the first things I say is, before you do anything, just make sure everyone around the top table's on board. And if that takes a bit of time to get everybody onto the same page, then take that bit of time, because when times get tough, and they will, and when programs run into difficulty, which they do, you want everybody to be shoulder to the wheel, trying to help you get over what that problem is. You don't want people saying, well, I told you so, if only we'd done X instead, not particularly So yeah.
Very relevant point. In terms of maintaining momentum, because certainly on how you define transformation and how I define transformation, it is inherently big. It's usually lengthy process. It's not something that you can do very, very quickly. Maintaining that momentum as you go through is an essential skill. What sort of things do you do to ensure that can be maintained?
Well, I'm a massive fan. So as I said to you, I don't really get on to delivery until I get into sort of chapter 4 of my book. But in 3, where I do setting up for success, I talk about something that I call packaging. And I think this is where the magic is. So I don't think there's any place anymore in today's world for programs that do go into that dark hole for 3 years and then do the to-do. It's bound to be wrong. The world will have moved on. So I think the magic is in what I call packaging, and that is looking for ways to break down work into manageable chunks that you can, bring forward some benefit delivery, and do it quite purposefully, knowing that in some cases, by doing so, the whole thing might cost a little bit more, but it does mean that you start to test the water. I've worked with a couple of organisations where they've tried to implement agile, and they've tried to do it through a waterfall program, and you can't waterfall your way to agile. You agile your way to agile. So I'm very much in this mindset that says, find every opportunity to break down work into manageable chunks that you can deliver some business value. And that might be because they deliver a chunk of benefit, or it might be because just as an organisation, you learn from it. You develop a skill you might not have had that sets you up for future success. And then focus, 100% on making sure that early business value is realised. And that does, you're smiling, that does two things for me. One, it de-risks the whole delivery because you're learning as you go. But secondly, go back to the question of board confidence. If they can see stuff getting delivered, then you're more likely to continue to get your funding, and you're more likely to continue to have the board's confidence. So I hate the word agile. I have a section in my book where I have a nice rant about it. I don't think companies want agile with a big A, as in agile frameworks, but I do think they want agility. And I think that, definitely the approach that says break things down, deliver early, get early value, learn as you go. Yeah, fill your boots. Great practice. So that's my approach.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's the same approach as the answer to the question, how do you eat an elephant? You take the first bite and you keep eating it, don't you? And that's the same thing. How do you deliver a transformation? Well, you break it down and you take your little bites and you continue to eat little bites, and then you talk about it and communicate and show that you're making progress, and people come on that journey, as opposed to suddenly breaking that thing down in 3 years' time, saying, as you said, da-da. Here we go.
And the beauty of this, so going back to getting transformation right and learning lessons, the beauty of this is you're not wedded to anything for a long period of time. You put some stuff in place to deliver, the mechanics to deliver, and as you're delivering, you learn from it, don't you? And you go, well, that worked really well, or we've got a problem with our structure over there, or our methods don't work over here, or that supplier, we hadn't really integrated them fully. And then you go, right, before I now do the next chance of delivery, I'm just going to fix those problems. I'm going to fix my structural issues or my cultural issues or my supplier issues or whatever the issues might be. So I think it also promotes a culture where you can improve as you go, which is so important. And I think that a transformation program led well and managed in the right way leaves behind a whole raft of lessons for the organisation. It shouldn't be something you look back on and you shiver. And I think too many organisations do right now. They look back and they shiver. That was painful, that was expensive. I think in my ideal world, you leave behind a legacy, which is really greater agility, better ways of working, teams that are more integrated, certainly between change and IT and the business. You should leave behind a much more integrated structure.
Yeah. And I also think you should leave behind, because you've taken the team with you and lots of people have been involved, you've upskilled them with those core agile agility style approach to problem solving in their own right. So it's and that can then help on that sort of continual improvement within processes, within functions, within the organisation as a whole.
I think that's absolutely right, Tony. And to build on that, so I often, in my plans when I'm looking at programs, I have these things called agility increments, which are delivering skills, ongoing skills that the organisation needs. And, the other beauty is that if you leave behind those mechanisms that can manage improvement in the future, and you leave behind a healthy backlog when you leave of ideas for improvement, it means that the organisation can seamlessly transition from big programme world into the new world of operation. They've got the stuff in place, and that's often a problem area for businesses. It also means, though, that when you're in delivery, you don't have to address every single idea and every single pain point, because you're leaving behind a mechanism that things can still happen through. Things can still get prioritised and done. And I find that stops people from behaving like, if I don't get everything 100% now, I'm never going to get it. So it does allow the programme to eventually wind up naturally, and move on, which all programmes need to, don't they?
Absolutely. So what's your one takeaway then? What's that number one thing? If you could only go into your next initiative and know that you get this one thing absolutely spot on, what would that one thing be?
Oh, it's for me, it's always focus on the eventual outcomes you're trying to achieve. Everything else is subservient, it's kind of like, I am there for one reason only, and that is to bring about that step change improvement in a capability, a market, customer behavior, whatever that is, and everything else is subservient to it.
Yeah, it's that guiding light, isn't it? It's every decision can be taken. Are you moving closer to or further away from where we want to get to?
Yeah, absolutely. And that allows you to be super ruthless, doesn't it? Then somebody comes along and goes, "Oh, while you've got the bonnet open, can I do X?" And you say, "Nope, doesn't take us where we're going. It's a detour."
Yeah. And I also find by having that, if there is discourse in management teams, you can go back to the discussion, the point in time where that management team, that exec team, all agreed that was where we were trying to get to, and that it creates some healthy discussion, but at least you've got that point of reference.
Yeah, I'm definitely in the camp for having the discussion. If somebody's got a great idea and they do think this is the right vehicle by which to deliver that idea, let's have the discussion. Yeah. But what I wouldn't like to face into is 70 ideas a week being put on the table, that really weren't related to what we were trying to do. So yeah, I think it's that, being absolutely mission focused, every day in every way, heading for that strategic goal. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for your time. And in terms of accessing your book, is it available on Amazon and usual bookshops and stuff?
Yes, it is. You can get it in Waterstones or Amazon, any of them. Getting Transformation Right. think it's £2.99, the ebook. Thanks, Tony. Really, really good to chat.
Super. Okay, thanks, Jane.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks, Jane. That was great. Once again, I'm really pleased that you've been able to join us and share your experience. For those of you who want to take a look at Jane's book, have a look on the show notes. There's a link to where you can purchase a copy. The Transformation Leaders Hub is going from strength to strength. So if you haven't already, go and check it out. www.thetransformationleadershub.com. With that, once again, Jane, thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.